Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of In a Heartbeat. I'm your host, John Clor. Today I've got a real special show for you. You know, if you've been a regular watcher of In a Heartbeat, you know already that we always discuss things about your health and your welfare. Well, kind of the leading discussions about, your quality of life these days has to do with the green movement. So today I'm wearing a little bit of green, and we're going to have a little green discussion about our mobility. And that discussion is going to center around something that's near and dear to our hearts, cars. And today we're going to talk about an electric car. And if you know what I'm talking about when it comes to electric cars, you know it's about the Chevy Volt. So we got a little special guest today. You've seen him before on In a Heartbeat. His name is Chris Sawyer. He is the founder of The Virtual Driver and runs thevirtualdriver.com. There's really nobody better to talk about the technology and the reasoning behind our switch to going electric, and is really to find out, is it something we should be all charged up about? So let's bring in Chris and take a look at this brand new Chevy Volt and the technology involved behind it. Here he comes now. All right. Wow. Wow. Looks great. Chris, welcome.
Hi, John. How are you?
How you been? Again, folks, this is Chris Sawyer of The Virtual Driver and thevirtualdriver.com. Chris, what a machine. It looks spectacular, and this is the new Volt that everybody's been talking about.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, when they see this on the road, we're kind of used to electric cars that and hybrids that look different. I remember when the first Honda Insight came out, and you knew it was really different. That didn't look like a car. And even the Prius had its own kind of distinct, but this car looks kind of like normal.
It doesn't look utilitarian.
It really doesn't. In fact, it's kind of sporty and racy looking. How long have you had it? Just this week?
Had it for the week, yep.
Have you? So you've had a little chance to drive it around a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this isn't General Motors' first shot at an electric car.
No, not by a long shot, although it's very similar to their first shot at an electric car.
I don't know if the folks out there remember, but there was something called the EV1. Now, Chris, I remember back when we worked at Auto Week, the EV1 was a big deal. And
oh, absolutely. I mean, it was California had tried to mandate a certain percentage of electric vehicle sales each year in the state, and came to the conclusion after a while that the battery technology at the time really didn't work.
Those were what, lead acid batteries?
Lead acid for the most part.
Same old batteries we have in our cars,
Yeah, nickel metal hydride, for that matter, was just coming on stream, and nickel metal hydride, or NIM, is now an old technology.
Can you imagine that?
Because we've moved that quickly. But at the time, you could get maybe 40 miles out of your EV1.
Wow.
60 when they tweaked it a little bit. But that was it. I mean, and granted, that's really not a lot. It's enough to cause anxiety for most people, but it is actually pretty close to what people drive every day. On average is about 29 miles, maybe 40 for longer trips.
Right.
But so you can do it, but you run into so many anomalies. What's the weather like? When it gets colder, you don't have as much battery.
Batteries don't work as much.
Exactly.
And this original program was a program for consumers. A lot of people think it was just a test. They actually they didn't sell these cars, they leased these cars, the EV1s. So you bought a lease, and your job was to use it in everyday life, and then General Motors would study your driving habits, how the cars held up in day-to-day use, and just the kinds of things, the wear and tear kind of issues, to see if an electric car for regular consumption was feasible.
And also what they had to do to change the next generation, because the EV1 as it was just a prototype. And what most people don't realize is that its original name was Saturn. It was going to be the first production vehicle of Saturn.
If you go back and Google it and look what an EV1 looks like, if you don't remember, they were kind of shaped like a bar of soap. They were very smooth.
Like a tadpole, yeah.
They're very smooth looking, so they didn't look like a normal car like the new Volt. But Chris, it didn't work out. I mean, there were a couple.
Well, for a lot of reasons.
Now, if you guys had watched the movie, I know they did.
Who killed the electric car?
Who killed the electric car? It was a documentary, and of course, the Hollywood types never really have any general understanding of what really works.
Our life.
Our life here in Detroit, about what the business is all about. It was really far more a business case than it was anything to do with politics or some master plan.
And it was also it's a vehicle that doesn't work across the country. It works in California, in Texas, in what they call the smile states along the lower edge of the lower 48, and where it's warmer, where you don't your electricity rates are often nuclear, not coal-fired as
Right.
they are in the middle of the country and the East Coast. And also that your trips are much shorter, and your general atmosphere is such that it's easier to use that vehicle day to day than it is in a place where it rains and snows and does
Right.
everything else that
Right.
normal
Or up and
people
down
used to.
hills
Yeah,
when it's kind of
ex-
flat.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, and then that was the other thing. A lot of people were worried about that program because they thought, well, if this doesn't work, are we just stuck with piston-driven gasoline engines for the rest of our lives? It did work kind of well. And the people that had them, I understand, Chris, they loved those cars.
They were fun cars. They were
And I
great
think
cars.
the documentary was written because people didn't want to get out of their electric cars. And
They didn't
don't
want to give
forget,
them up. Yeah,
they
exactly.
weren't living here in Detroit. They didn't try to get the thing going at when it was 5 below in the morning, and they had frost on their windshields. They were in California or Texas. But Chris, when that program went away, tell us a little bit of the business case. Why wasn't it a viable business case back then to
Well,
build electric cars?
Well, battery mostly. The range wasn't there.
The technology wasn't
Exactly. The technology, even the rare earth motors and the inverters that you use to change the battery power into the electric power and all of that alchemy that goes on under the hood.
Right.
Has changed so much. I mean, Moore's law in electronics. Every 18 months electronics change.
It's like, yeah.
Same thing happens here.
Really?
Every 18 months it's changing. It's a different generation.
Yeah.
Well, you look at that was 1999. This is 2011.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time and a lot of iterations that have gone through.
It sure is a long time in electronics.
Exactly.
Think about if you have a laptop that's more than 2 or 3 years old, it's ancient. Your cell phone,
Absolutely. The EV1 was running DOS.
Oh my goodness.
This thing is running Windows 7 or
Yeah.
even the Mac OS.
Yeah.
It's very much like that. That's the level of change you've seen in over that period.
Now, plus, I think, forget the business case for a second. There was a legal case because you're driving you were driving a prototype back in 1989, and if General Motors would sell you that car, there were issues that there were no parts to fix them.
Liability if something broke.
Something
GM was
happened
on the
to
hook.
you in an
Yeah.
electric car that they didn't foresee. So you were part of a pilot program. So it was both the lawyers and then, of course, the scientists who said, you can't sustain
Right.
this vehicle.
But much more the lawyers in this case, because GM's liability was in the many, many millions of dollars. And it would continue until the last car returned to the earth, as it were.
Right. So they couldn't, despite what you saw in the movie, they couldn't just let the people have those electric cars. As much as they loved them, that wasn't an option for General Motors.
And those vehicles didn't just go away either. A lot of them were used in testing the volt components, but also a lot of them have been used in testing for the hydrogen fuel cell.
Right.
So it's not like those vehicles are just crushed. Yeah, a lot of them were, but a lot of them still are around and they're being used.
It was a viable program. We learned a lot about the technology, but as Chris says, those 10 years, once you get
the world has changed.
It's a world. And
Yeah.
just think about all that had to be learned before we come out with a car that we can actually sell not only to the general public, but to sell in any climate, really. Here in Detroit, you can buy them. You can buy them all across the country. I think that the EV1 discussion, despite what you see on the documentaries, there's a whole business case. And I think that people need to understand that Detroit really wants to make things that move the industry forward. It's just that it wasn't the time then. And maybe, Chris, with this product, and there's a new one from Nissan,
The Leaf, yeah.
the Nissan Leaf, that are coming to market this year. And maybe it's another chance for us to put that toe into the water to see if it's time for at least some of us to change the way we get around town, especially, Chris, you say for those people who live within, say, 20 to 40 miles of work and back.
Well, within a 20 to 40 mile round trip.
Okay.
You can do that all day long.
So if you have 20 to 40 mile round trip every day, the idea is if you plug in overnight, and you unplug your car, you drive to work, some employers may give you the chance to recharge at work.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you unplug, you go back home, you could conceivably drive back and forth to work every day without buying gasoline.
Right. The theory is, as I've heard it from some GM people, is that you can take a Volt, and if you're within that sweet spot, that range where you can do it all on electricity most every day, you'll use a tank of fuel a year.
Wow. I mean, now there's a big difference. We want to discuss that right off the top, that between the product from Nissan and the one from General Motors. The Nissan Leaf is a pure electric. In other words, Chris,
Full battery power, yeah.
full battery power, you don't have any options. When it goes dead,
You're dead.
better have good shoes on because you're walking. And a lot of people, the funny thing is the media from which we were we were born and raised through the automotive media back in the day when that was that meant something. The media is beating up on General Motors for having this gasoline backup so they can run a generator and power the car, and they're really calling the Nissan the more pure electric, and they're giving it some kind of praise. Whereas I don't know about you, but sometimes, Chris, I think the idea of an American, we're not in small crowded cities and we don't live real close. Sometimes I know a lot of guys that commute to work 30, 40, 50 miles. Some guys are up in Pontiac, some guys are down in Monroe, and they're driving back and forth. That car is not going to work out for them.
No, not at all.
It's not.
It's probably a third car for that family.
So a car that you could just take for small trips around
You'd
town.
use on the weekend. You'd use it during the week to pick up the kids from school, the groceries, things like that. But you're not going to be using it for commuting and what you think of as using a normal car for.
Right.
I mean, a normal car is, let's face it, it's, for many people, an appliance. It's utilitarian. You have to do a lot of things with that vehicle. And the Leaf has the potential for a lot of people to become more of a problem than it is a boon.
Right.
Because while they claim 100 miles, if you were one of the original Leaf people, one of the early adopters, and you signed up on the website, you also had to sign a little piece of paper, a legal piece of paper that said, you must understand that this car may get as few as 62 miles on the charge.
Wow.
Well, that changes things.
That's a big
quite
difference
radically.
in 100, yeah. Well, can you imagine then, maybe for right now you have a beater car in your family and you give it to your kid to go to school and back. And that's what he takes to school, the mom's old Civic or the old Focus or the Escort, and they drive that to school. Because to school and back, it's a couple of miles to home. And that's what that car was always, it was always the oldest car in the lineup. You give it to the kids. A lot of people are saying, well, the Leaf would work that way because you're just going to school and back. Maybe even if you get off campus to lunch, you could take it to lunch. That will serve you well. But as far as a commuter, as far as a car that's replacing one of your regular cars in your fleet, an all-electric may not be the best idea. And I think a lot of people are confusing that. I don't know what the media, what their focus is, but for me and you, the people that live here in Detroit or in Grosse Pointe,
their focus in a lot of ways is that it's real easy to beat up on General Motors partly. And this car has been shown so many times that the joke is, hasn't it been out for 5 years already? Well, no.
No.
In fact, it's just rolling out slowly right now.
It just is now, yeah.
But the other part of it is, well, you've got an engine in here. And is it a hybrid? Is it not a hybrid? And there was a big argument because GM was saying this is an extended range electric vehicle. The engine just charges it up and runs it when it needs to.
Right, so the engine in here is not powering the wheels.
It does actually. Under certain conditions like acceleration, hard acceleration, going up a mountain, things like that, is going to occasionally step in and have the motor power the wheels, put power directly to the wheels. However, 99.9% of the times, much like, ivory is 99.9% pure.
That's right.
This thing is running fully on electric power. The engine, when it is running, is just charging it up. It's like, for example, if you're at home and you live in an area like I do where the power goes out often.
A lot.
First thing you do is you go out and buy a whole house generator.
Buy one of those big generators on wheels, right?
Well, no, I got the one you
really?
sitting out front. Oh, yeah. So what happens? Power goes out, that thing kicks in, you've got power. Same thing here. The engine, when the battery is depleted enough, it will kick the engine on. The engine is not putting power back into the batteries. It's putting power directly into the electric motor. The drive motor is still driving this car. So under most conditions, that's what you see. And so it is still an electric vehicle.
So it's to think about it simply, in case you're not a techie, think about it this way. There's not like a hybrid which uses two powertrains. One is the electric powertrain to help, the gasoline powertrain. This gasoline engine is here to charge the batteries, and it's still using the electric motors to power the car. Chris, I think it's time let's take a little closer look at this and do a little bit of a walk around. First of all, if you haven't seen the Chevy Volt, it's got a unique styling, but Chris, as I said,
that's the most unique part right there.
Now this isn't where you put gasoline in. Please don't try to go to your gas station.
In fact, it's even on the
Now how does there you have it. So it's even electrically powered.
Did you expect anything else?
Well, if your battery's dead, how are you going to charge it up? That's the question.
And the interesting thing is the charger comes with the car. You can get a charger that's 220 that goes in your garage, and that will charge it up in 4 hours, full charge. 120, just wall circuit, or 110 actually.
110, right?
You plug it in. There's a 25-foot cord. It's got a little charger attached to it.
Really?
You plug it directly into an outlet. You don't want to plug it into an extension cord, because the extension cord can melt.
Oh, of course,
because of the draw.
So it's a big, thick cord.
And it's got a nice big handle on it. You put it in. That's all there is to it.
Now,
but you got to remember one thing that I learned very hard.
What's that?
And that is, don't leave the car locked and unplug it, because then the alarm goes off, because it's like, hey, you unplugged me. So you have to unlock the car and then unplug it.
My question is, this cord configuration, of course, is nothing like you've ever seen. It's not like you're charging your snow thrower in the wintertime. Is this standardized across the industry?
It's standardized across the world.
Okay, so if you had, no matter what electric car you'd buy,
you'd see
this
that.
is the same kind of.
And one of the reasons is that it's so deep is because the charger goes over that, so that in the rain there is no question that you're going to get a shock.
Okay.
Right.
So this is the one way to this is the way to
be
repart.
standing in 3 feet of water and plug it in.
Now, what about if you need gasoline?
That's over on the other side.
On the other side.
Just like it always is.
Just like your car. So this is the new way of charging your car. You can do this in your own garage. You don't need a special power, like some guys have to have a 220 line for their welder. If you got your hot tub and it runs off the 220, you can do it in your garage. But this will actually come with a regular cord. You plug in the wall outlet and you plug your car. Now, what's the typical charge that you found that works?
7 hours.
7
hours from, it will give you a full charge. It's not something you're going to plug in for 10 minutes and get a charge out of it and go somewhere. You're going to go like maybe a half a mile.
Yeah.
Because there's a 16 kilowatt hour battery in here. That's a lot of energy.
Right.
It runs down the center of the car and tees in the back,
okay,
which is the same, oddly enough, as the EV1.
That's
a very proven, very proven technology there.
Yeah.
And the reason is it keeps the weight low as well. But in 7 hours, you've got about 40 miles of charge, depending on the weather, depending on a lot of things. You can also set it. The interesting thing is, the car will say to you, you can set it up. How do you want to charge? Do you want to charge immediate?
Okay.
Fine. It goes right in, you're charged.
Wow.
Or you can set it, you plug it in, and there's a timer on it. And it will say, it will charge in from this hour to that hour. And it will tell you, if you start charging now, it will be finished at this
it tells
point.
you when. So is it kind of like your laptop? It tells you how much charge you have to go and remaining? It's like a gas gauge?
Well, not really, because that's more the screen to set up.
Okay.
But when you get in the car and you put the power flow on and you want to see the battery charge, it has the T-shaped battery with all the wheels around it and such. And it will show all of them or part of them
being charged up,
all loaded, and it's ready to go.
I think when you think about the technology that's just gone into this car since that first EV1, you're looking at a kind of leap forward, and the fact that we can do something like that here in Detroit. Chris, why don't we get in and pull the hood? Let's take a look under the hood. Why don't you see if you can get this baby open? This is going to be a whole different thing for us, Chris.
Get it open?
Yeah,
let's get it open.
Let's see if you can get this. Yeah, okay, because I don't really know what to expect.
Yep.
Here we go. Wow.
Here's your prop rod.
Yep, just like a regular car there.
Yep.
Now, when you look at it, it doesn't look like you have any gasoline engine at all.
That's it right there.
This is the gasoline engine, and
that's your inverter that does all of the magic for the electronics.
Okay, and then these are this is
wiring? The cables right to the electric drive motor, which is located down there.
Okay, so what we're doing here is we've got what displacement on this engine?
So 1.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which is the same engine you would get in a Chevy Cruze, which is what this car is based on.
Right, so it's got the same kind of power plant for that, but that's the job of this power plant is really to keep a charge into this.
To keep the electricity flowing to the electric motor. It doesn't put a charge into the battery.
Okay, so what you want to do is you want to keep this motor charged at all times. Now the electric motors, is the drive motor up here and it goes through a drivetrain? Because a lot of electric cars have drive motors on each wheel.
Right, well that's one way of doing it, and whether that turns out to be the best way or not is depending on a lot of factors, cost, suspension design, all sorts of things.
Right.
This is probably the cheapest, easiest, and most effective way to do it, especially in terms of long-term wear and tear, because you've basically got, that's 149 horsepower, that motor.
Wow.
It's 111 kilowatts.
For those of you that had cars maybe 5-6 years ago, a 4-cylinder car would be really difficult to get over 120 horsepower.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this gets out of its own way.
Yeah, it's carrying a lot of weight because you've got 434, I think, pounds of batteries in it, but that's all low to the car.
Right.
But that's 400 pounds more than a Chevy Cruze.
Right.
Okay. And so that is a bit of weight for you to take around.
Right.
And you do feel it at times. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the nice thing about it is torque on an electric motor is instantaneous. You have 100% torque, and this is hard to understand, from 0 RPM. And the reason they say 0 RPM is because the minute it starts turning, you've got absolute top torque.
That's amazing.
So this thing is going to get out of it does get out of its own way.
So people, what they need is when they open the hood of this, the engine to me seems a little bit over to one side. This is just a packaging thing. The Chevy Cruze doesn't have its engine mounted this way.
Actually, it does.
Oh, it does. So it's like
over there would be your air cleaner and everything else that you would normally have.
So how brilliant is that? They've actually packaged it so that
it's all in the same space.
And this car is built in Hamtramck.
Yep.
So are they all built in Hamtramck?
Yeah.
So every time you buy a Chevy Volt, you're buying in
the same plant where they build Cadillacs.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. Well, it's kind of strange to see it. Is there any service items underneath the hood, Chris? Like normally we check the oil.
Well, yeah, you check the oil. There's your dipstick.
You got your dipstick, so you can check the engine
oil.
oil.
You can do that, and it tells you it takes 5W30,
which is the standard model. You have so the kinds of
things.
There's
very little that you can do that you really need to do, and with a car today, there's little to do anyway.
Yeah.
So this is in many ways even less. But the one thing is, and the thing that I think you have to be careful of, is that as an owner, you sort of get used to the fact that you've got this electric motor, and so I don't have to care about that motor.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
You still need your oil
That's
change.
still your generator. It's going to get you home.
Yeah, that's right. So let's not forget, it's with the gasoline engine there, you still need an oil change when you get a certain mileage or in time.
Right.
You still need to do basic maintenance on your car.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, in the age of the self-service gas station, all we've become is no service. People don't check their air in their tires. They don't check their oil. They don't check anything under the hood. I make an old joke. I remember when Liz Aiken used to do the show as Positively Positive. She said, do your kids know a lot about cars? And I said, well, the problem with the kids today is I would ask someone to open the hood and they'd set the parking brake.
Yep.
Because they don't know how to open the hood.
Pretty much.
But this car, I mean, as you can see, it's got the regular, I mean, you'd look at it and the only thing you see is all these big heavy cords. Is this a safety issue?
It is. Well, it is for anything. It is for hybrids, and so you see under here, there's this sticker here that tells
you
the fire and the rescue people where to cut the 12-volt line so that they will disconnect the power from the battery pack.
Yeah. Imagine in an accident.
When you've got to get in and you've got to save somebody's life, you don't want to be cutting a cable that's carrying all of that power.
No, the jaws of life is metal.
And so what GM and other manufacturers do is they have to create a booklet that tells them how to do it.
Wow.
And they go through it with the fire chiefs across the country and say, what do you want to see? How do we do this best? And so they create all of these procedures to do this, and then they put it all together and they make sure that every one of them has it.
Well, in an accident with a Volt, I mean, the car is heavier. Is it lower to the ground, Chris, or just right?
Oh, yeah, it's a lot lower to the ground. If you'll notice, the front end of this car is not
it just
that
seems
far
like
off the
it's
ground.
a road hugging. The car is down a little bit low.
And that's all for aerodynamics, because this car has a drag coefficient, I think, of 0.29, which is really
pretty
darn
slippery.
low.
So the car's lower, so its center of gravity is lower. With the added weight, the likelihood of getting hit and then rolling over wasn't like in a minivan.
Oh gosh, no.
No, because so it's pretty low to the ground.
You're going to need the Incredible Hulk to turn this thing over.
Well, let's can we take a look inside the car? I mean, because I really I see this, and I know this is a design exercise, but it's a 4-door.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you
Grab
have
my notebook there? So it's out of the way.
So you have, and it's got a regular trunk? I mean,
yeah.
Come on. I mean, when we see electric cars when they first came out, remember the Hondas were 2-seaters.
Right.
No, you've got
this has got 4 full seats, and I like the way they've done it with 2 individual seats.
You have two buckets, and you've got a console in between.
Right, which is where the battery is.
Probably
running down.
more room than a sporty car like a Mustang or a Camaro.
Very much so. And
okay, and is it a trunk or is it?
Oh, it's about
a hatchback.
3 cubic feet.
A hatchback, and then the seats fold down.
Seats fold flat.
So, that's really cool. So it folds forward, so you could get a good 5 feet of.
Look at how high this is. It's amazing how much it will hold. And then you've got down here, because the car doesn't have. There's your charger.
Okay.
With
the charger out.
With the paddle, and this is your inflator for your tires because there's no spare tire.
So you've got room to put a bag of groceries, maybe this high, and set them right into the car.
Oh yeah.
You could fold the seat down. You can go to Home Depot. So
and you still got room to put the kids in there and yell at them.
You can almost reach back and
trust me, you'll be yelling at them because this car is quiet.
Now that's the other thing. I heard that some manufacturers say that they want to put some kind of a electronic engine noise into their car.
Well, part of that is because blind people and deaf people would have trouble. The deaf people would see the car moving, the blind people wouldn't know what was coming at them because they wouldn't hear it. So now there's a move afoot globally to add a manufactured sound so that you know the car is coming.
Oh my goodness.
And there are all different sorts of we could do it this way, we could do it that way. I think it just sounds like the Jetsons.
The Jetsons car, yeah, remember the Jetsons car with the little electric. I think it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because I know working with the OEMs that the manufacturers had to have limitations on the sound. I mean, their cars had quiet and noise restrictions,
and now we're
adding noise back into the car.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Chris, this is pretty phenomenal when you think about what this car offers. You can go 40 miles on one charge. You've got room for 4 people. It's got a real trunk, a real usable trunk. It's not a little 2-seat, kind of a toy.
Yeah, it's not a runabout. It's a real car.
A hatchback, 4-door. I mean, I think you've got, they've got something here that's a viable alternative. Now, let's just understand one thing before we take off in this little baby. Let's try to figure out really what you're really saving. If you think you're buying an electric car because you're going to save the world by being green, a lot of people talk about, well, if you plug in, you're using our own natural gas, our own coal, our own nuclear power, which is all ours. We don't import that. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's probably not that much cleaner. So if you feel in your heart,
it's dirtier.
It's dirtier. So if you feel in your heart that you want to save the earth by getting an electric car, that's probably not the reason for buying one. If you have this just hatred of going to the gas station, that's probably the reason you would want. It's not, we don't import that much oil.
No, most of it is coming from Canada.
So most of it, the idea of imported oil, our dependence on it, we just don't want to give our oil money to terrorists. So you're not going to be doing that. It's just that with this car, you can just switch your lifestyle out of the gas station and into your own driveway or garage, where you can plug in and feel you're going to help DTE rather than Citgo. So it's a shift in that kind of, but I don't think, Chris, that you give up a whole lot. And I'd really be curious. I want to go to thevirtualdriver.com and read your report, because I know Chris and I have been driving a lot of cars for many years. You've got a lot of seat time in all kinds of cars for decades, and this shift in reality of what we're driving has got to be kind of a unique feeling for you.
It takes a while to get used to, I'll tell you that. But you're also taken by the technology, and you've got to sort of step back and say, okay, am I just a fan, or do I really?
Well, why don't we close it up and take it for a ride? Chris,
Sure.
Why don't you close it down? I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us here on In a Heartbeat. For those of you that don't watch us often, we're going to bring Chris back and talk about some of the other, lifestyle issues of the day. But for now, we're going to take a little ride in this Volt. Until next time, remember, knowledge is power. So I'm your host, John Clor. Thanks for watching. Chris, let's take this baby for a spin.
It did it.